You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Welcome to episode 16 of Ethnosynology. I'm your host, David Ian Howe. This is Ethnosynology with David Ian Howe. It gets redundant, but I'm going to keep doing it. In this episode, I guess to backtrack here, I had, for reasons I won't get into, I had to provide writing samples for stuff. I had to gather this thing today and send it off. I realized I'd made one of these into a video. It was the one on the Americas and the Columbian Exchange. It was a quick 3-minute YouTube or Instagram video. It was like a little short writing thing. The posts I used to do on Instagram, the little short ones with Ettori's artwork. Ettori Maza, my artist. He's Stefan Milo's artist. He's North O2's artist. He's the History Guy's History Times artist. Anyway, I'm boring the listeners that are very dropped off. Anyway, I used to post these things on Instagram before Instagram shifted more towards video, and I would get home from work and have all this anthropological thought in my head that really was probably just mental illness that was like, I have to get this out, which is what made me start my Instagram. And I would write these little posts, and then I reached out to artists who put those, can I use your illustration here? Because it does match what I need in this to show what I'm talking about. And that's when I found Ettori and started working with Ettori. So there's the Ettore, I think is how you say his name. Ettore. I don't know how you say it in Italian. It means Hector in English. Great guy. Talented dude. So I'm just, for this episode, just going to read these little short stories. And for the listeners, I'll put the link in the description or in the show notes for each picture if you want to follow along. And you don't have to look at it. If my writing's good, you don't need to look at it. Okay, so some of these are Ettori's artwork. Some of them are artwork from other artists that I've also reached out to. And then some are just ones with a picture of me, I think, or a strider. I guess we'll just dive in. I literally wrote on this Instagram post, writing samples, in parentheses, in no particular order, by David Ian Howe. Close parentheses on the other part. So I'll just read the first one. This is called The First Dog Burial. I commissioned an artist, Ettori Maza, to illustrate what an ancient dog funeral might look like. I now use this to introduce new audiences to anthropology. I asked them to look closely and notice that these Eastern European Upper Paleolithic people are fully clothed, not shirtless. There are men, there are women, and there are children. There is a shaman adorning the dog with symbolic ochre, and the people have adorned themselves with tattoos and jewelry. I explained to them that all of these material details in the image are supported by the archaeological and ethnographic record. I asked them to look at the postulated emotion Maza painted on their faces, the sadness they felt burying the dog. I asked them to look at the female consoling the child holding their leg while carrying an infant on their back. I point to the person behind them who cannot bear to look at the scene. Finally, I asked them to take note of the other clan members in the background, respectably observing from afar as his family lays their loved one to rest. I tell them, this is how people used to live. They weren't less than human. They were us. These people mattered, and that's why anthropology matters. That was the first dog burial. Would it be weird to leave a moment of silence after each one to process it? I guess just pause yourself if you're listening to the podcast. Pause and think about it for a second. And again, these are in no particular order. This is jumping a lot of time from 14,000 years ago to about 1,000 years ago in Hawaii. But we'll start with Polynesia. This one's called The Voyagers. No matter what corner of the earth you travel to, be it the frozen tundra of the Arctic, the arid deserts of Africa, Arabia, or the Americas, or even among the scattered archipelagos of the inconceivably vast Pacific Ocean, you will undoubtedly find a thriving population of talkative, fire-wielding apes. What is even more remarkable, however, is that upon meeting said simians, you can guarantee that padding contently or warily behind them is a small, talkative wolf. But hang on. You can walk to the Arctic and the desert, sure. But how the hell did Neolithic humans cross the Pacific, much less dogs? The ancestral populations of modern Austronesians set sail from Taiwan and other areas by 5,000 years before the present, and eventually settled islands Southeast Asia, Micronesia, and Polynesia. The Polynesian Triangle, known as Hawaii, Easter Island, New Zealand, and the many islands in between, was slowly settled from about 3,000 to 8,000 years before the present. We know from petroglyphs, oral histories, and experimental archaeology, like at the voyage of the Hokulea, that the Polynesians had incredibly complex methods of navigation. Voyaging in their double-hulled canoes, outfitted with panadus sails and rudders, these tenacious people understood so much about the world around them and used this knowledge to settle the Pacific. They understood the direction of ocean swells, currents, bird flight patterns, how to orient themselves and calculate distance using solar and astronomical positions, and even knew how to find atolls and lagoons reflected under the bottoms of distant clouds. What is most impressive to me is that when these island populations grew to capacity, they sent successful voyages across the Pacific, not only bringing with them enough food and water for themselves, but also for their sowable crops, chickens, pigs, and domestic dogs. Try to imagine the planning and cultural coordination that would have taken. The level of tenacity and desire that these ancient peoples must have had to sail with our friends into the definition of the unknown honestly brings a tear to my eye. Human ingenuity is incredible. That was the Voyagers. This one is called Human Culture. When we think of the concept of adaptation, we often think of the wings of a bird, the snout of a wolf, or a chameleon's camouflage. However, there is no adaptation in the animal kingdom more unique than human culture. Culture, in its simplest terms, is shared and learned human behavior. Culture differs from our biological adaptations, like walking upright and having thumbs, in that it must be learned. You must learn how to use tools. Humans do not make fire instinctually. This is culture. Systems like language are transmitted to the next generation through culture. Your mother singing to you as she collects plants teaches you language and helps you understand the world you live in. As well as learning how to respectfully butcher an animal from your elders helps you understand your culture's values and your place within the world. Culture is also learned through our mistakes and the unspoken rules we make or break in social situations. Who gets to eat first, who makes the first move, and what to say to someone who is grieving. Culture helps the Inuit survive the Arctic, cowboys and Kung find water, and keeps New Yorkers from walking into traffic on Fifth Avenue. The methods of cultural transmission used by our Paleolithic ancestors in this illustration, where they tell the story of the deer and humanity's place among them, are the same methods that still exist today. Society is just a bit more complex. We are cultural beings. Because culture is both taught and learned, we have a unique ability as humans to shape the world our offspring inherit. Now more than ever, I would encourage you to use your anthropological knowledge to create the type of world where our offspring will be increasingly better humans. That was Human Culture. This one's called New Horizons. This piece of artwork, I guess I should add stuff about the artwork here. The first one's the dog burial. That's the one that does the original thing I had from Atori that got me from like 5,000 follows on Instagram to like about 12, I think, with that one post. And that's just what took off. So that's when I was like, I'm working with that kid from now on. The Voyagers I just had because the concept of dogs in Polynesia is just fascinating to me. And like I mentioned this in the lecture, Captain Cook got to Polynesia and was like, whoa, they have dogs. Pretty cool. There's also a cool journal entry of Captain Cook. Many cool journal entries from Captain Cook's voyage. Some of them very problematic, others interesting. His view of the world was so interesting because he was obviously Christian. He had such an open mind to people in Polynesia. He was like, oh, look at these customs, their cultures. Oh, they seem sexually loose. That's not my thing, but interesting. But when they would come steal from his boat, like they'd show up on the shore and row the boat, and then people would just come take stuff from the boat, he would get so pissed. He was like, they have no concept of property. And it's like, yeah, they also have no concept of the Pythagorean theorem, dude. You gotta like chill. And he couldn't understand, but I guess in Cook's mind, he thought that stealing was an inherent trait that all humans shared was wrong. But in Polynesia, I guess them showing up on the beach with a boat to them was like, oh, we can take stuff from here. That wasn't stealing to them. So he like couldn't figure that out. A very open and progressive mind for the time. He even does a journal entry of him. It's like a wonderful episode, actually, dark, but they would always offer him dogs when like to eat dogs. And they would go eat dogs on the beach. And he finally was like, why do they keep offering me dogs? Jesus. And then he was like, all right, we'll eat it. And then he had a journal entry where he's like, it's actually pretty good eating. And he like explained like how they built like an earth oven and put leaves over it and buried it over with sand over it. And it was like tender right off the bone. And like every other island he went to, they would offer him a dog and they were like, hell yeah, would eat the dogs along with pigs and chickens too. But like the chickens and pigs were more like their food. They would offer dogs as like a ceremonial. Hey, welcome to the island. So he was cool with that. He just couldn't figure out sailing. And then by his like third voyage, he was just like, I hate these people, and was pretty trigger happy. So that's a different episode. That was a whole tangent too. You know what? Let's use this as time for a commercial break and we'll be right back. Welcome back after my defense of Captain Cook. I'm just kidding. But the Cook's voyages are fantastic. And I know this is the Archaeology Podcast Network. I don't know what network this podcast, it's called the Explorers Podcast. It's my favorite podcast I've listened to. And it's exactly like this one where each episode starts with the intro, a theme song, and it's very well scripted and written. And there's like a commercial break. It's like just a well done podcast, just like a quick, easy listen, 30 minutes each or less. Columbus, Magellan, Marco Polo, Henry Hudson was one. I said Magellan. Who was the other guy? I want to say Abel Tasman, like Cain and Abel. He was the Dutch guy who explored Australia before Cook. Fascinating stuff. And like the way the guy has it all written out is excellent. I recommend that a lot if you're into the Polynesia aspect here. But back onto our stuff. Human culture. This one, I told Tori, hey, can you have people sitting around a fire with a dog? Like where they're telling stories and there's a shaman and stuff. And he was like, got it. The lighting in this picture is incredible. You can see that in the show notes. He's so good. And there's a guy looking at the picture, looking at the cameraman, essentially. I love it. And this was supposed to be in Poland. The dog burial was in Czechoslovakia. I think I said that, Eastern Europe. Polynesia, just somewhere in Hawaii or Tahiti. And then, yeah, human culture is somewhere, I believe Poland is what we described it as. So this next one is New Horizons. This has to do with Paleo-Indians. So, New Horizons. Humans are an incredible species. We climb to high altitudes, trek through the dense tropics, and sail the scattered archipelagos of the Pacific. We now even have outposts on Antarctica, beneath the ocean, and off-planet. Of course, the romantic idea of grabbing a walking stick and then setting off on an epic adventure is great when reading fantasy, but how did ancient humans actually accomplish such a journey across the Earth? Why move? Maybe the climate has changed, and your normal foraging patterns are interrupted by drought, so you have to head to greener patches. Maybe you're a big game hunter, and your culture revolves around following reindeer, bison, or mammoth who then migrate to unexplored lands. Or maybe you hunt seals and follow them along the coast for years until one year they don't return, and you're forced inland. What now? You already know how to build shelters, find water, and make fire, but soon you'll run out of tools, so you need to find good stone. Then you look for landmarks like mountains, rivers, and coastlines that help orient you. But what about food? Sure, you know the seals or reindeer you were eating are safe, and you know how to hunt them without getting killed. But how now do you interact with foreign fauna you've never encountered? Mammoths are big, but Colombian mammoths are bigger. Short-faced bears are aggressive, and what's a giant sloth? Furthermore, you have to supplement your diet with plants. Which ones are poisonous? Which ones are edible? Which makes you hallucinate? In a new world, there's no stories passed down to tell this. There's no culture. It's all new. Who's there? Not only do you need a keen sense of botany, ecology, and geography, but you also have to understand humans. So in order to successfully establish a human population in a place without one, you need to have proper genetic and social exchange. You need to have a band of at least 25 people to survive, and hopefully run into 25 more in your lifetime to exchange culture, technologies, and genetics. There's no room for hostility, just curiosity. Doesn't hurt to have a dog, too. And the sources for that were Meltzer, 2010, Kelly, 2013, Kelly and Todd, 1988. Those are probably outdated, but those are the sources that I used for that. Just Meltzer's book is how I figured that out. And then I used Robert Kelly's book, or Dr. Bob Kelly, to understand like the hunter-gatherer, the foraging spectrum. How many, of a population do you need to stop inbreeding? So I tried to say you had to exchange technologies, and genetics would mean there's bride trading. I guess groom trading could be a thing too, but the word for it is bride trading. You got to exchange genetic flow in an area, or else you're going to start being inbred. And that's sure Elon Musk has that figured out when he wants to colonize Mars or whatever, or people that do that, or how to colonize a new population somewhere. But yeah, for hunter-gatherers, it seems that to be the case, that that's how much you would need. Okay. Oh yeah, and this illustration is what made me go on that whole aside. This illustration is me and Strider in this one overlooking Beringia. And it's like Tori made it me first. And then I was like, hey, like maybe make that an indigenous dude with braids. And that's just how cool Tori is. He just erases my face and then put indigenous person with braids, which is pretty cool. And then we changed it from Strider to a different dog as well. But the original version that I sent and used was the Paleo-Indian and Strider. And it ended up being in the New York Times. I'll get to that. But yeah, it was, I asked Tori, can you get me a landscape of North America or Alaska somewhere that has all the fauna in it? And he was like, I hate those big pictures where all the animals are just like sitting there in like a Garden of Eden looking thing, all cohabitating together, because that's not real. but we like talked about it for a bit, and he was like, there really is no other way to show that in one illustration, so I'll just go for it. And then he took an amazing swing at it, and it's great. But there's a ground sloth in the foreground, there's bison, there's American lions, there's wolves in the far right. They're blended in. He's so good. The background kind of looks like Mount Fuji. I love that. There's mammoths in the background. And then the horses on the left, every time I post this, people are like, there's no horses in North America. You know, it always adds comments, and then people are like, actually, dumbass. And they'll correct the guy. And then someone's like, actually, dumbass, the horses went extinct. Horses are from Mongolia. And then it always creates, it's so interesting to see what sparks conversation, especially when I repost these things over the years, because I've been doing this for 6 years now. 7 years, maybe? Damn. The horse always gets a debate, always gets comments going. Yeah, the guy's got an atlatl. My professor pointed out, like, he really loves bear necklaces, bear tooth, bear claw necklaces. And like every painting, someone's wearing a bear claw necklace. But bear claws are cool. And if you killed a bear, I would also wear them as a necklace around my neck. So there's that one. Yeah, this is an excellent picture. I use it. It's my background on my computer. This one's also nice too. When I'm making videos, I can just zoom in on specific fauna in the background and use that as an example. This is just a good picture to have. I've milked the shit out of this one, but I let Angela Perry, Dr. Perry, use this for when her article about the peopling of the Americas came out in 2019, and it was all over the New York Times and stuff, and BBC and CNN and stuff. I said, go for it and use it, because I guess I could have milked and got rights from it and had New York Times pay me. I don't know how that works, but I was just like, Angela does this research. I regurgitate it and give it to people on a big platform. So I was just like, I'll use this. Thank you. You did a lot for me. So go for it. And then all that to say, one morning Strider was on the New York Times. Like, it was pretty cool. And people were sending it to me and be like, hey, is that your painting? And I was like, yep, pretty cool. And I see it used all over. I've seen it on Reddit pop up a few times too, on the Paleo Reddit. Pretty cool. Tori's gifted, man. He really is. Okay, that was New Horizons. This next one is Neolithic breeders. In the modern world, our phenotypical concept of dogs is one of extreme variation. From Siberian Huskies to Xolots Quintlies, and Great Danes to Chihuahuas, our dogs come in every size, shape, and service. But this was not always the case. At the time of their domestication, at least 20,000 years ago in Northeast Asia, dogs looked nearly indistinguishable from wolves. In time, though, dogs slowly became smaller in stature, the size and spacing of their teeth decreased, and their coats became a color not unlike that of the dingo. And while we'll never know the true extent of their use, based on historic and ethnographic data, we can assume early dogs helped hunt, haul, and protect. It was not until the Neolithic Revolution that dogs would dramatically change, both phenotypically and culturally. Agriculture led to an increase in human population and caused the division of labor to become more specialized. Those who spent their days plowing fields now relied on other skilled laborers, smiths, cobblers, etc., provide them with goods, and those providing goods now relied on farmers for their food. As for dogs, this cultural shift likely gave rise to specialized breeders and kennel masters, spending their days focused on dogs. I wrote this interestingly as it's so matter of fact, but this is all conjecture, but based on genetic evidence, this would be the case. Neolithic breeders selected for specific wolf behaviors like stalking and territoriality to create dogs for guarding, herding, and hunting. The latter were further bred to target specific prey, thus creating the extreme phenotypic differences between dogs like hare-hunting Salukis and the rat terriers seen today. Interestingly, dogs were also bred by some for their furs, as well as emergency, ceremonial, or culinary food sources. Yet, as a byproduct of population growth, the Neolithic unfortunately gave rise to more stray dogs. These dogs still endure tough lives, scavenging refuse, and are considered pariahs by humans. I find it simply incredible, though, that from the Neolithic to today, the breeding of dogs for task specialization, appearance, and companionship drastically changed them from the wolves they once were into an incredibly diverse and efficient human biotechnology. This next one's called Of Mammoths and Men, but a note on the kennel one. Since dogs were domesticated in East Asia, Tori and I were like, let's just do like a Neolithic village in China. And like we don't often, especially in the West, we don't really see Neolithic China ever shown. So obviously all Neolithic villages kind of look the same, like wattle and daub huts and wooden structures with clay or daub on the side. But yeah, these ones just look a little pagoda-y, more pagoda-y than they don't, and versus something in like Scotland. So that's pretty cool. And the guy's like clearly like Asian looking that's hopping over the fence, and the dogs are dingo colored. So these are all things that like Tori and I like discuss. Not so much like the race of the people usually. I kind of let him go at it. But yeah, something this is I met a Tory in 2019, so I guess I should add this too. Right after that was the Floyd protest, where we all put our black square in our Instagram so we didn't get yelled at. And another thing, conversations that came from that were like, hey, a lot of paleo art is just like white dudes with no shirts like hunting mammoths, and that's not the case. So working with a Tory, I was just like, hey, can you like make them... I think one picture I had them do that. It was the original dog burial one. I was like, can we make them darker? And he was like, I already painted it. So they just look generic human. But in the later ones, especially the one in Poland, like the very dark-skinned people, which would have been the case back then, especially we know that because of Cheddar Man, I think, in England. And the ones that were later that we have painted that are in England, that would be the case too. So I guess to note on that, I don't always say this is what I want the race to be, but it is something I am cognizant of because I don't personally like when I see paleo art where it's not accurate and they're just like, it looks like Nirvana is hunting a mammoth. Dave Grohl's the lead guy. But I also like don't scroll through paleo art being like, oh, this one's racist. I don't do that. In 2020, I probably didn't post it about it, but we've all grown a bit. Okay, I'm just trying to be honest. We all got caught up in it, I think, in a lot of ways. And it manifested into how do we teach about prehistory? And I want to make sure that I'm not whitewashing prehistory. I'm presenting it accurately. And then it's to the point of, do I make my artists sweat about this, being like, hey, you might get canceled for that? Because like some people were pretty ruthless back then. Something we had to worry about. I think in Italian, he was like, but everyone was black. And I was like, yeah, I know. But I think he meant like that was a different conversation from the origin. All humans were at some point is what he was trying to say. Okay. Canceled. Moving on. The ape and their friend. This one's a drawing of two skeletons, a dog skeleton and a human skeleton with an atlatl. We'll try that. Imagine you're an intergalactic naturalist on a voyage like that of Darwin and the Beagle. As a decent scientist, you're not to step in and teach them the secrets of fire, pyramid building, or how to get even the toughest stains out of laundry, because those are things they can and will learn on their own without help. No, you're here to document the landscape, the fauna, and the flora, and report back to your people on let's say you, Space Darwin, land on Earth around 10,000 years before the present. You first set your foot, fin, flagella, or tentacle, whichever one you have, in Africa. But then you travel to Europe, Asia, Australia, and the Americas. You note that while wild wolves are roaming the northern latitudes and forest-dwelling apes dart in the tropics, there are two other species of each that not only cohabitate, but side by side populate 6 of the 7 continents. You write in your journal, one Earth day, near the zenith of the closest star, while observing from a distance in our camouflaged outpost on a northern continent, we saw something unseen in our system, let alone galaxy. A mammalian ungulate came darting from the forest behind us. What followed was haunting. A small wolf and upright ape came barreling behind it. The ape shouted commands to the wolf, which listened, and changed its path of pursuit to the right flank while the ape went left. The ape, which as had mentioned is already wearing the flayed skins of an ungulate, then launched a stone-tipped projectile from the lever in its hand into the animal. Finally, as the prey struggled to run, the wolf, coming from the right, subdued the animal by sinking its impressive teeth into the neck and its claws into the ground. The ape proceeded to butcher the animal, taking only certain cuts and throwing others to the wolf. The ape then gathered wood, brought it to combustion with friction, and proceeded to cook parts of the animal. The next day, the two loaded the remainder of the kill into their packs and headed west. The cooperation between these two species is truly remarkable. This one was a fun one. I just wanted to show an illustration of what human and dog skeletons would look like in hunting, like if it was an X-ray. But just to hammer in the zoological aspect of humans and dogs. Like how would I phrase this? We're the same. Mammals all evolved from the same, like original, like synapsid, whatever the thing was. And then we just evolved differently. And we have the same bone structure, really. Just one's quadrupedal, one's bipedal. And this is a cool picture of it. And I liked Tori's excruciating attention to detail with the skeletons, but also the atlatl. And you can see the furs that they were wearing outside. I can tell he sketched humans wearing clothes and then traced that, and then inside of it drew the skeletons. It's pretty cool. And yeah, that one was a fun one. Like, I don't know what to do with the illustration. I just wanted the illustration, and then I made a post with it. And if I were to write a fun fiction book, that would be the kind of way I would do it, I think, a little more succinctly. And another thing I noticed while reading this too is all of these were a lot longer and flowed better, if that makes sense. But I can only fit 2,200 characters into Instagram. Like anything after 22, and I had to keep hashtags in too. So a lot of it got cut out in some words here and there. This is Honestly, I tell this to kids too. When a guy interviewed me last week for his YouTube channel, do you have life advice or career advice and stuff like that? Something I say is, one, I said this on Ruins, if you can't tell me what your dissertation is in an elevator, like an elevator pitch, literally, don't write it. No one's going to care. If you can't tell me what your paper's about or like you have to be able to just explain it quickly. There's some caveats to that. Someone asked me last night, what was your master's thesis on? Who doesn't do archaeology? And I was like, okay, but you have to be prepared to have that ready to go. Like my thesis was complicated and complex to explain to someone who doesn't understand archaeology. Even like an Egyptologist would be like, what? But you got to be able to do that. But writing for Instagram, if you have a term paper, try to write it as a 2,200 character Instagram post first. Like that way your idea is there. You know exactly what the idea is and you have a beginning and an end to it. And then you can expand upon it. Or the way I've been doing it is I have a big long post and then I have to condense that down and cut out words here and there. And I love my Oxford commas and semicolons and stuff and my compound sentences, which makes it very difficult to read, as my editor just learned. Or to read out loud for me. Someone else probably can read it just fine. But it's just the way I feel most comfortable writing. So anyway, that one was fun to me. I enjoyed how that one looked, or how the illustration looked, I should say. Okay, and with that, you know what? Let's take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back. And we're back. This one's called Hands of the Past. Many qualities separate us from the other apes and animals. Certainly, our upright posture, complex language, and consistent tool use help define us. But nothing is more human than the use of symbolic culture. We've been the best at it for the last 200,000 years. To me, there's no symbol more representative of humanity than the ghostly handprints left behind by our ancestors. In this illustration, we see examples from around the world, Patagonia, Indonesia, Africa, and Southern Europe, of humans adorning rock walls with positive and negative hand stencils. Positive hand stencils are created by transferring pigments directly from the palm onto the wall, while negative hand stencils are made by blowing pigment around the hand before removing it from the wall. The pigment most frequently used for this is known as hematite, a ferrous iron oxide mineral, Fe2O3, commonly referred to as red ochre. Animal fat, applied to the wall beforehand or mixed with ochre from a paste, acted as an adhesive for the pigment. Red ochre also has utilitarian purposes, such as hide preservation, and can be used as a dye. It is often found coating human burials, and various forms of it, conglomerates and stains, can be found at sites around the world. I always like to think of archaeological sites as paintings. Each one is unique and tells a different story. As you view this illustration, remember that archaeology is a painting of life in prehistory, one usually painted in red ochre. But back to hands. In addition to being beautiful works of art, ochre hands also tell anthropologists that our ancestors possessed a theory of mind. They had the capability to say, I am human, but also the forethought to communicate onto their descendants, I was here. Yeah, that one, I enjoyed. This one of my favorite illustrations he's done for me. It's just like it's such a complex illustration, I can't use it frequently, but I love it. This one's framed in my house, or was framed in my house when I had a house. Yeah, this one's excellent. But yeah, you can see Patagonia with the torch in the background. The lady's face here is Indonesia. That's the rock art that was found a few years ago there. That's the oldest rock art in the world, I believe, outside of Africa. And a guy in Africa, you can see the top smearing pigment on the wall. And then, of course, every illustration has a dog in it. And the Southern Europe person here at Chauvet or Lascaux, there's a wolf skull like next to them on the ground, which, is cool. I like how Ettore, I always make sure the first few, I was like, make sure there's a dog in it. And then the rest of them, he did. And he also knows too, as I've said this, in cave art, dogs is as uncommon as finding humans in cave art. They paint every other animal for some reason, except for wolves, dogs, and humans. There's lions, there's hyenas, there's bears, so it's not a predator thing. There's ungulates, there's seals, there's other things. It's, for some reason, they don't paint humans and they don't paint dogs. It was probably taboo or something, or it was just that they were always there and you could see other humans, you could see dogs up close all the time. It wasn't as cool to paint them. I don't know. That's a whole topic, but... Okay, this next one's called Humans of the Past. This is artwork by Norbert Toth. And I've never met this person. I just DM'd them. I was like, can I use this? And they said yes. And that was it. So I've been using it. Humans of the Past. It's easy for us to belittle people in the past. To many, prehistoric man may appear to be unintelligent, uncivilized, and outright boorish. However, this is far from the truth. Thanks to scientific research, anthropologists posit that as far back as 50 to 70,000 years ago, anatomically modern humans completed their transition into behaviorally modern humans. You and I. With a brain this evolved, you could take somebody from 50,000 years ago, put them through modern kindergarten to high school, and they'd be able to pass a standardized university entrance exam. They weren't dumb nor barbarians. They were us. This means they could problem solve to better adapt to their environments. When it started to snow, they fine-tailored winter clothing. When there were droughts, they stored water in eggshells or by digging small reservoirs. When throwing spears weren't effective enough, they invented simple machines to help them hunt. But large brains also granted them our emotional humanity. Prehistoric humans cared for their elderly and the infirm. They liked to decorate their homes and adorn their clothing with handmade jewelry. They liked to give each other gifts, as well as dance and sing. They debatably cared for their dogs. They likely complained when it was too hot and held each other when it was too cold, and probably impatiently roused the person making the campfire. They definitely told jokes and surely practiced schadenfreude when their cousin stepped in dog poop or dropped a hammerstone on their toe. Though they may have called them something different, these people had dreams, anxieties, and aspirations. And more importantly, they laughed, they cried, and certainly loved. I like to think that the individual in this illustration had enough with their siblings for the day and retreated to their secret spot to spend the afternoon decompressing in peace. If it was me, got into an argument with their family and blasted Nirvana in their room. This one's cool. I just love the vibe of the picture. It's just like an angsty teenager in a cave, like sulking, but it's just so pretty to me. Like the handprints and like the background, you can't tell if it's ice or if it's snow or smoke. Like the boots, the hair, it's cool. The face paint. It just seems like it's from a video game. It's cool. I like it. This was from DeviantArt. I found it there. How many more do I have? How much time do I have? Oh, I actually don't have time for all these. Let's see. I'll stop talking between each one of them and just blast through. And also half this stuff was me going, I can't read. Ancient Humans and Wolves. This is an illustration with me and Strider. This is the first time he painted me, and I was like, whoa, that's so cool. And there's a wolf pack attacking. This is 10,000 years ago in France, I believe, is the way we had it illustrated. Ancient Humans and Wolves. What you are seeing is a Paleolithic human and their dog being cornered by wolves. I do not seek to propagate the Western idea that wolves are dangerous man-eaters. That would not entirely be true. However, I do want to instill the notion that humans are not immune from the natural world. As evidenced anthropologically, our hominid ancestors were preyed upon by cats, bears, and even large birds at times. Thus, our more recent ancestors in the Upper Paleolithic, at least one time or another, surely found themselves in a similar situation to the one above. It's been hypothesized that the ancient Eurasian humans likely modified and evolved their hunting strategies based on observing wolves. So just imagine being a nomadic human in such a harsh, unforgiving world, and what it must have been like to see such equally formidable and socially intelligent animals move freely across the landscape. Not to mention hearing the sound they make when snarling over a carcass or howling with one another into the night. There is no doubt in my mind that Celtic, Germanic, Hellenic, Japonic, and many indigenous American oral traditions, which regard wolves as symbols of nobility, wisdom, and strength, stem from this ancient appreciation and respect we have for wolves. Furthermore, it's likely that only after we started farming and raising livestock that wolves became such a persecuted enemy. I believe dogs, who were domesticated from ancient Eurasian wolves, are an artifact of our ancient relationship we humans share with them. Every time I look at my dog, I'm thankful that both our ancient ancestors naturally came to coexist. And every time I look at my dog, I'm reminded of the respect I have for nature, our past, and the wolf that he once was. Cool. That was that one. I like that one. One of my employees ordered this illustration and put it on a tank top, and he's like, I'm going to work out in that. And I was like, that's cool. Thanks, man. He thought it was pretty sick. But yeah, that was cool. That was the first time I came up with dogs are an artifact of the past. And that line has, every time I drop it on a podcast, they're like, whoa. So this is where writing comes in handy. I drafted this one a few times and writing my thoughts out. Then I remember these little pockets of, for some reason I read that one better than the other ones. These little pockets of information in my head that I then, when I'm asked stuff on a podcast, it's I can access it really quick. Because it's not just that I read something and then I wrote it down, and therefore it's stored in my brain better, if that makes sense. I guess that's what education is. I don't know what I'm describing, but I've synthesized information in my head. I got a little more here. This one is called Animism, Animals, and Anthropology, and this artwork is by Velazar Semyonovsky, a really talented paleo artist. This guy's cool. Does a lot of cool stuff. Let's read this one. If you've ever looked up not the shaman, I believe it's the sorcerer. It's a Paleolithic painting from France or Spain. I think it's France. It's called The Sorcerer. He illustrated this in a better image of it. Let me read this one. For the listeners, sorry if you're not looking at it in the notes. It's a guy with a deer head, like wearing a deer head and antlers, and he's like posing or dancing in front of a cave wall. It's creepy, but cool. One of the most exciting things about being an archaeologist is that we can use science to answer questions about our human past. But what I find even more exciting is there are still so many more questions we don't know the answers to. We are certainly able to answer questions regarding what people ate, what material culture they practiced, and how they died. But one thing we will never fully understand is what they thought of the world around them. This is what keeps me up at night. I want to know what they thought about the warmth of the sun, the sound of the wind in the trees, and what they thought about different animals. Based on the interpretations of cave art, presumed artifacts, and ethnographic accounts of Aboriginal peoples, anthropologists believe paleo-humans may likely have been animists. Animism is a belief system in which all things, living and inanimate, possess spirits or souls. Souls is in quotes. Some might argue that our modern biases might influence this theory, and they do, but it's also hard to argue against it. Life in the Stone Age meant constantly interacting with plants, animals, and the elements. This would surely lead ancient humans to believe something along these lines. If I could redact all my modern knowledge and live 20,000 years ago, I wonder what I would think about deer behavior, the way water flows, or the dank creepiness of caves. I believe dogs are an artifact of our animistic past, as they are a living symbol of human interaction with the animal world. If you've never set foot in a cave nor camped in a forest, your dog connects you to the natural world our ancestors came from. And speaking of thoughts, I think that's a cool one. Maybe this was the first time I came up with the artifact one, but either way, these were a year apart that I wrote these, so maybe I just didn't even remember. Yeah, let's do a few more. I got some time here. Yeah, that one's, I like that artwork. The next one is Meeting Neanderthals, and I've used this one constantly. I use this in memes. I just love this illustration. You can see it here in the show notes, but yeah, it's awesome. I like this one. It's like a group of modern humans waving hi to Neanderthals in the background, and they're meeting to like trade presumably wolf furs. Tori just, it gets me. It's really cool. Meeting Neanderthals. We live in a human world, yet at times in our past, we were not the only humans to walk the earth. In fact, there were at least 3 geographically distinct ancient populations of humans coexisting as recently as 40,000 years ago. Some of these humans were the Neanderthals. Try to imagine such a world. Imagine sharing the planet with another living creature who harnesses fire, makes complex tools, and uses language. And more jarringly, this creature is also capable of human emotion. Imagine being able to interact with a second sapient being and hold a conversation. You probably wouldn't be discussing late-night philosophy. You'd probably be able to trade, convey an idea, or at the very least, greet each other. We know from archaeological evidence like Amud, Sakul, Kafse, and the Oase in the Levant that modern humans and Neanderthal populations were overlapping in time and place. With clear evidence of genetic admixture between our two populations, it seems our ancestors may not have perceived as many differences between each other as we do today. Could this be the case with our cousins? If the land area one witnessed in a lifetime was a decent mix of humans and Neanderthals, wouldn't that just be the status quo? Not to mention, it's easy for us to forget that Paleolithic humans likely only interacted with a couple hundred or less people in their lifetime. So in my opinion, to see other humans would more often be a cause for curiosity and cultural exchange than for violence. You must keep those genes and culture flowing. That's not correct, but that's what I wrote. Humans usually choose curiosity and trade over violence, and that's why Neanderthals live on within the genomes of more than half the world's population. In this scenario, Tori and I placed humans and Neanderthals at a meeting point marked by a wolf totem. Speaking of, is that just a wolf or something more in the distance? So that one, yeah, I posted to Instagram, and if you can see way in the background, there's a proto-dog in the background, because dogs didn't exist at the time that Neanderthals did. It was like right after. but that domestication process was likely happening. So I have them there in the background just so the thought is still there. And then we're trading wolf pelts right there in near Kafsa in the Levant, or Israel, Palestine, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, I think that's a cool one. All right, this one's a doozy. Let's get to this one. And then last one's on tattoos, which is cool. Okay, this one's called Love. And I had this, there's several different versions, and this is on skin color because I didn't, how do I explain this? There's one where it's like me and a woman in the illustration, and we had different versions of it where it was like light skinned, dark skin, and then medium skin. And then on the website, I did this specifically because Atori just changed the color in Illustrator. But I have these, by the way, these are all for sale on my website, davidianhowe.com/store. If you want to look at them there, you don't have to buy them, but just showing it that they're there. And also use code InstaFriends, I believe, for 20% off if you want to. But what I was going to say was I can see which ones people buy, and they've actually all been bought at the same like rate, which is cool. I thought it would be wasting his time to do the different skin tones, but people did the different skin tones. I don't know the people who were buying which one, but it's cool to know that like the options of this one were cool because I wanted to be able to fit whatever you want in your house. This one's called Love. Love is a chemical reaction in your brain. Some might find that reductionist. I find it beautiful. When I see someone I love, my eyes take in the light waves that reflect off their person, which my brain processes into an image. My olfactory system sifts the chemicals radiating from their body and becomes their scent. And the sound waves emanating from their vocal cords create vibrations in the acoustic chambers of my ears, which my brain interprets as their voice. Working in tandem, these processes signal to my nervous system that this amalgamation of atoms is familiar and comforting. When I'm in love with somebody, these feelings multiply tenfold, and I feel at home. As zoological beings, these reactions lead to reproduction. Among primates and human societies, intercourse serves as a social bonding mechanism, bringing people together, diffusing situations and stress. Evolution drives us to reproduce biologically and socially. This is why sex feels frankly indescribable. I don't have children, but I can understand how it must seem magical that the qualities you love about a person can manifest into another human being, one that is biologically your other half. The absence of love can be devastating. Primates need physical and emotional affection. When a loved one leaves your life, it causes mental and physical illness. This can be equally as damaging whether they're alive or dead. Yet grieving for a loved one can bring humans closer together. While my views of love have modern biases, there is no doubt that our distant ancestors at some point felt these physical phenomena, but their ideas regarding love are beyond our ability to fathom. Was love sacred or profane? Was sex private or public? Was love monogamous or polyamorous? Did they marry and have affairs? Did love give life meaning? I don't know. I do know that about 14,000 years ago, humans began to bury their dogs. This tells me that they certainly had the ability to mourn for their loved ones, as they extended this humanity onto a non-human animal. Whether they loved them in the same sense that we do today, I don't know. But that is a neat thought. I wrote that for my girlfriend at the time. She was like, yeah, that was a fun one. And then let's see. Yeah, this one's in the Czech Republic as well, near where the dog burial one was. Just like cool Eastern Europe looking place. Mountains, they're in a cave. I had a whole short story written for this one. Not ready yet to share anywhere, but it exists. And yeah, there's Strider in the background. I love this picture. It's the background on my, I have two monitors. It's the background on the other monitor and on my laptop. Last one. I got a tattoo a few years ago of Boromir on my arm. And I wrote a piece about tattoos, and this is after I got out of the hospital because I got diagnosed with GBS, and I long story short, was paralyzed for a week, and then I had to go to PT and walk I would fall belts, and I had to not learn to walk again, but I had a walker, and it was not fun. GBS is called Guillain-Barré syndrome, and it's when you get so sick that your immune system attacks your nervous system because it goes too hard attacking the virus. I had a sinus infection that I just was I'm fine. I'll be good. And I thought it would go away, but it just didn't. And then a lack of sleep and traveling. And then I had COVID a month or so before. So my immune system was just shot. And then Yeah, it was pretty wild. I like walked into the hospital and I was like, I can't feel my hands or feet. And they were like, oh no. And then the doctor did this, like the little test on my kneecap. I'm going on too much of a tangent here, but like I just remember the doctor's face distinctly when he did the reflex test with the little hammer thing and nothing moved. And he went, oh God, you have Guillain-Barré based on the symptoms. Like, he's going to have to admit you. And then a week later, I got to leave the hospital. So anyway, this was after that. And it wasn't so much that you'll see it in the post here. After all that, I was like, I need a tattoo. So last one here. Tattoos are anthropologically spiritual to me. Not just because we know archaeologically that humans have been tattooing themselves for millennia, but that tattoos are a permanent visual representation of one's ontology, culture, and consciousness. I get tattoos during the chapters of my life I want a permanent reminder of, or after closing a painful one. Physically, I love the elevated heart rate and anxiety I feel just before the needle touches my skin. The sting I feel when the needle punctures my dermis and fills it with ink. The intense and trapping pain I feel when the needle pushes over a bone, forcing me to remember that I am zoological. Finally, the cathartic release I feel after the artist stops the needle and wipes away the final bit of blood. Not just revealing the work of art, but also a permanent modification I've made to my body. Evolutionarily, such modifications signify that one can endure and survive pain. Spiritually, I love that the constant pain of the needle forces me to dissociate, allowing me to reflect on my past. When the release of that pain brings me back, I can choose to release the pain of my past along with it, or I can choose to imbue the good memories of the past within the tattoo, transforming the pain into excitement for the future. Above all, I love how each new tattoo forces me to be vulnerable. Each one is a piece of art that permanently displays not just my ability to endure pain, but represents my past, my passions, and who I am as a person. In tandem, when the pain of the needle begins, the past chapter ends. While the open wound heals, I heal my mind along with it. After the tattoo absorbs, I write the new chapter with its ink. With this new tattoo, I wanted a reminder of the adventures and happiness I experienced during this past chapter, but also needed to release the pain I endured towards its end. And I chose to permanently add to my body an often misunderstood yet crucial character from a story that has significantly shaped the person I am today. That character is Boromir, and the story is The Lord of the Rings. In the Fellowship of the Ring, Boromir is a noble warrior who is as brave as he is caring. Yet along the journey, we learn that he's also deeply flawed. Despite his selfless desire to use the ring to defend the people of Gondor, Boromir eventually succumbs to its power and the very evil he has spent a lifetime fighting. Boromir's corruption is a tragedy that leads to his death. But in the face of death, Boromir sacrifices his life to defend those he has sworn to protect. With 20 enemies slain at his feet and several arrows impaled in his chest, Boromir selflessly continues fighting until its collapse. And it is with Boromir's dying words of remorse and loyalty in Aragorn's arms that the future king accepts that men are worth saving and assures Boromir that he will not let their kingdom fall. To many readers, Boromir is often misunderstood as an antagonist, but I think people often overlook that in a story full of wizards, hobbits, and immortal elves, Boromir is the only true human protagonist in the first book. While Boromir's arc was clearly written to aid Aragorn's growth and explore their two competing forms of masculinity, I also believe Tolkien created Boromir to remind us that to be human is to be flawed. And so I have tattooed Boromir's final act of selflessness on my body to look at when I need to be strong, and to remember that while I too am flawed, my flaws are what make me human. That one's a little sappy in a sense, but I wanted to use that, like the original tattoo one, and then the Boromir one is less sappy, it's just about Boromir, but I love Boromir. But I wanted to use the tattoo one as a post, and I shared that on Instagram and targeted the ad to tattoo. I wanted to see if that would work. And a bunch of tattoo accounts followed me and were like, dude, that's an amazing example of tattooing. And then my friend Aaron Dieterwolf wrote Ancient Ink, the book on archaeological tattooing. And I'm the dog archaeology guy. He's the tattoo archaeology guy. And I wanted to do a series of posts on tattooing and use that to get in there, but I got too busy with other stuff that summer and never got to it. But yeah, it's sappy and intense, but it was, I just wanted to I hadn't written something in a while and I figured I'd write. And then the anthropology of tattooing is cool to me in that sense. But this has gone too long now. Yeah, that's that. If you liked these, I can do more of them. I have tons more I could post that I have posted that I could read on the podcast. If you like this format, I can do that too. My editor's going to kill me because for you listening, reading those were probably easy. This was a struggle to read because I can't read. Yeah. Thank you for listening, and please rate and review the podcast. You can leave comments on Spotify. You can leave comments on YouTube. But yeah, follow us on any other show on the network. I just did a crossover episode with Carlton, Shield Chief Gover, on the Great Plains Archaeology podcast. And yeah, that was a fun one. And yeah, with that, thank you.
The Archaeology Podcast Network is 10 years old this year. Our executive producer is Ashley Airy, our social media coordinator is Matilda Siebrecht, and our chief editor is Rachel Roden. The Archaeology Podcast Network was co-founded by Chris Webster and Tristan Boyle in 2014 and is part of Culturo Media and DigTech LLC.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.